All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to make a brief video. I don't. Maybe I'm embarrassing him. I didn't mean to do this, but I think it's worthwhile to bring out Rabbi in public that my old friend Reuven Taylor called me today, and he apologized to me, and I apologized to him. And I hope we can agree to disagree and be b'shalom. That's all. Shalom, shalom, tzvishen yid. And I have a lot of respect for him, to be honest. And one thing, I think he's better than these guys that he's began to be interested in listening to, Mizrachi and Reuven, he can do better than that. He has fine choshev rabbonim that he has shaykhs to. In Williamsburg, what does he need? Guys like Mizrachi and Reuven, he's better than that. That's one thing I could say. And such a choshev younger man deserves better, certainly better upon him than me. But we could be friends. I don't expect him to hold me a rebbe or anything, but we could be friends. But I mean, if he wants to be friends with Reuven and Mizrachi, I'd be friends with them too if they want to. But I was talking to one very choshev rav today, who I respect tremendously, and he said that these guys are dangerous, Reuven and Mizrachi, and he's right. They're very dangerous people, and the biggest danger, like our friend Rabbi said in the video today that he put out, was that and people have warned me about this. Why are you getting involved with these? They're really dangerous gangsters, both of them, and they're violent people, and they have violent followers, and there's a real worry that it could get violent. I certainly don't want to see that. But these are dangerous people in that sense, perhaps, but also in the religious sense, like Ari Roseman, inside, very choshev Gaman, pointed out that these guys they teach people a form of Yiddishkeit that's not authentic, and it's attractive to certain people. And I'll be honest, if that is what keeps people in Yiddishkeit for the long term, isn't to hate. Maybe we can, just like Chabad, we can agree to disagree. But too often, we say tefasta merubah tefasta. When you get involved with these types of inyonim, it's not healthy. It's not spiritually healthy, and it often leads to people dropping everything and throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And that's not how it's supposed to be. And so there's a danger in that. Just like, I remember Toldasaran Rebbe's son told me that there was a bacher who came to Toldasaran, and he put on a shtreimel and a golden kaftan, like they dress in Toldasaran. And Rebbe was trying to say, you shouldn't do this. It's not, you got to go step by step. Don't jump into things you're not ready for. And the guy eventually went off the derech. And I've seen it the same way. I've seen Gerim who went very extreme and then dropped everything. And it's one thing, you dabble in being Hasidish, and then you become Litvish, you become a Yekka, you can become this, you become a Rambamist, that's not a problem. But to drop everything, to become an atheist, and I've seen it. I remember there was one fellow, and he was fluent in Yiddish and everything. He was living in Borough Park, and then he became an atheist. It was a Ger Tzedek, and it's not either or. You could be a good Jew without wearing a shtreimel, without wearing a black hat, without wearing a yarmulke. I'll be honest. keep Shabbos, you keep kosher, you put on tefillin every day, you daven 3 times a day. If you happen to be wearing a 4-cornered garment, you make sure there's tzitzis on it, and that's it. Not like we see this world where it's a very different type of a situation. So I would say, with all that being said, if the people who it works for, and they stay long term in Yiddishkeit, whether they stay with that group or they stay with any other kosher group, it's not the end of the world. But it's not. But it's one thing. We talk about Hasidic communities that they're not extremists. They are more or less normal. Toldus Aaron, even though they might have extreme views on certain things, they're some of the most normal people you ever meet. You go to Yerushalayim and you go to their house, to Toldus Aaron Chassid, or to, like I said, to the Rebbe's family, whatever. They're normal people. They have a nice, normal Shabbos, and it's a relaxed atmosphere, and it's wonderful. But the people who didn't grow up like that and go there, and they're not normal, they're going to wind up dropping everything, and it's not healthy. And I've seen it wherever it is. I've seen it in Toldus Aaron. I didn't see it, but I heard about it from Toldus Aaron Rebbe's son. I saw it in Skver, in Satmar, wherever else. Breslov, Lubavitch also. And it doesn't have to do with the community that one is involved in. It has to do with, in general, a way that a person approaches the world and a state of mind. So, the danger of fundamentalism and extremism is not a group. The truth is there are no fundamentalist groups. Only fundamentalist individuals. You can be, I remember I'm not saying that this is quote-unquote gospel truth, but I heard this story on a radio show. It was actually a secular, like WABC, many years ago. It was a secular show, but it was a religious subject, more or less. A person describing a near-life experience, and this person, I think, was an atheist until he had a near-death experience, rather, and he claims he went to heaven and he was shown around by an angel and all these things, and then he became a believer after seeing it, right? So this fellow, he said that he asked the angel, what's the true religion? And the angel told him that's not the right question, because he expected the angel's going to tell him Presbyterian, or like on South Park, it was the Mormons, right? And so they sent Saddam Hussein to heaven with the Mormons, and that was hell for him, right? I haven't watched South Park in a long time, and I'm proud that I haven't watched it in a long time, because it's a disgusting show, even though it has some very deep messages in it. But it's too disgusting. The same thing, I stopped watching Family Guy 15 years ago, maybe not that long ago, but at least 10 years ago. And because it's just too disgusting, it wasn't. But anyway, so at least in some things I got a little better, but I shouldn't get arrogant over it. As Chatoy and Imazkar Ayim, I still remember these things, but like I said, there's a depth in a lot of these things. So this guy figured the angel's going to tell him, Lutheran, right? Something like that, whatever it is. And the angel said, no, you got the wrong question. And the answer that he gave, he said, there are good people in bad religion and bad people in good religion. That's a very deep statement. And it's a true statement. Because there is such a thing as bad religion and good religion. But there are good people in the bad religions, and there are bad people in the good religions. I believe with perfect faith that Orthodox Judaism is 100% the true religion. But I know that there are people, not only people like me who mess up, who know better and try to be better, mess up. But then there are people that Dennis Prager describes it. The sin of taking God's name in vain is to radicalize religion, is to use religion for radical purposes, like the radical Islamists. I won't call them Muslims. And so too, you have these guys like Mizrachi and Reuven. They're Orthodox Jews. They're in the right religion, right? But if you read the Navi Malachi, the prophet Malachi, chapter 1, especially verse 11, from the rising of the sun to the setting thereof, great is my name among the nations, says the Lord of hosts. Everywhere where they offer an offering, it's a mincha tahara, it's a pure offering. Everywhere they're offering incense and sacrifices. But you, the Kohanim, you, the priests in the temple in Jerusalem, what are you doing? How are you treating the widow and the orphan and the poor and the Levite and the convert? You know. And that's the $1 million question here, meaning, you know, all right, so you have the true religion, but what are you doing with it? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you living how you're supposed to be living? Does it transform you into a better person? Or are you abusing the religion, the true religion, for selfish or other reasons? You know, the Satmarav pointed out, that in Tehillim, in Psalm 139, it says, Chakreni Kel, it says, seek me out, God. In Derech Oitzev Bi, am I a depressed person? Am I an angry person? Is that is the way of anger and depression within me? And graciously allow me to go in the way of the world, an eternal way of the world. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that you know, if someone wants to be a zealot, let's see, how are they only a zealot for the word of God, or are they generally angry or generally depressed? And anger and depression are very closely linked, and they're both linked to a lack of faith. Because if you have faith, you're going to be besimcha, because you know everything is God's will. You're going to have joy, so you won't be angry and you won't be depressed. I don't mean clinical chemical depression. I mean being sad that leads to giving up hope and being despondent. And faith is the cure for that. Emunah is the cure for that. Real emunah. And so if one is a zealot, like this week's Parshas Pinchas talks about Kinnis Hashem Tzvakos, zealotry has to be in the terminology of V'hini noisen lois b'rsi shalom. Behold, I give him my covenant of peace. And so King David says, seek me out, God, and see if I have a way of depression and sadness and anger within me. And so that's why when I say I hate those who hate you, O Lord, I hate them with an utter contempt. They are become my personal enemies. Nazi tours. Meaning the hatred is not a personal hatred. It's become a personal hatred because of the godly aspect. That it's purely for God's sake. And so Satmar Rav said that that's the sign of a true zealot, is someone who is zealous for God and not for personal or emotional or so forth reasons. And the example he gave was Rabbi Blau. He said, like my friend Rabbi Amram, and anybody who knows about Rabbi Blau, right? He was an extreme anti-Zionist, but he loved everybody, right? And so when he would do his protests and get beaten up by the soldiers and everything, it was with a heart filled with love. And so when Zalman Shazar, who was the president of the state of Israel, would come Rosh Hashanah and Kippur to daven with Rabbi Amram was Mekabel and B'Sever Panim Yafis. He welcomed him with a smile. And when the Galite who davened there said, "Can we let the Nasi of the Koifrim, of the Shilton of Koifrim, how can we let this guy daven with us?" And Rabbi Amram said, he's a Yid just like us. The only thing is, we can't give him any kavod, any honor that we wouldn't have given him if he weren't the Nasi, right? But other than that, just because he's the president doesn't make him Ois Yid. And he wants to daven with us. He, on the Matirim L'Spalim of Aryonim, we're permitted on the high holidays to pray together with wanton sinners, and he's welcome like everybody else. Maybe we wouldn't count him for minyan, maybe but we have 10 without him. Maybe we wouldn't give him aliyah. He can daven here with us. And then Rabbi Amram also was Makar of Mishagoyim. He was Makar. He was very friendly to very mentally ill people, and there was a case where there was a guy who literally every Shabbos ate in Rabbi Amram's house, a homeless person, something, and they were celebrating one of these, and he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people like this that Rabbi Amram was Makarev, and he welcomed all these weirdos and homeless people and mentally ill people and so forth to have Shabbos with him. And one of the chevra there got married, and Rabbi Amram made the shidduch, made the chasana for this guy, this Nebuch guy, right? And one of these guys who ate in Rabbi Amram's house every Shabbos and only should have had things to thank him for, started to get angry and upset at him and said, why did you find a shidduch for this guy and not for me? Why can't you help me get married? And Rabbi Amram helped him get married too. So that's what it means. We all know what a kanoi Rabbi Amram was, but we knew what a Hoiv Yisraeli was. So, and we know he was Hoiv Gerim. He married a Gioris, right? And so he was an exemplar of what's supposed to be, in Klal Yisrael, and what it means to be a real kanoi, like Pinchas, to only stand up when it was really for the honor of God and not a personal issue. I'm not saying that people who are fighting against me, it's not a God thing. It is a God thing, and I'm a sinner, and I don't represent anybody. I don't claim to represent anybody but myself. That's why Badavka. I remember one Hasidic Rebbe, I was talking to him about opening a shtibel, something, and he said maybe he'd help me, and I said, I don't want to use your name. like maybe meaning I would be the Rav of his shtibel, right? Like he would open a shtibel somewhere, and I would be the Rav of his shtibel, but would be in his name. I'd be like his shliach, right? And I don't want to do that for the most, not to embarrass him. So then he said, "What? You're going to call yourself called Besmedr Satmar?" This I said, "No. I'm going to find a name. Either I'll call myself Richmander because I was a Rav in Richmond, or I'll find somewhere Ichus in my family, and use that name and be a Machshavas for Zichalain. Mostly so I'm not representing anybody else but me, right? And if I'm taking from the Chavas Yoyer, who was before the Hasidim, and that's the name that I'm going to take is Koblenz, because Chavas Yoyer was Rav in Koblenz, also because it sounds nice, but part of it is I'm representing myself, but also I really have a very strong kesher, not only a biological one, that I'm a descendant of the Chavas Yoyer. Yesterday I was sitting with someone who's Ben Acher Ben from the Chavas Yoyer. He's not taking that title, but I have a very strong love for the Chavas Yoyer and Sfarim and everything. So and the truth is, I feel very much akin to his derech in everything. Mamish, whatever I learn from the Chavos Yoyer, I feel that's been my derech. Meaning like I learned the Mekor Chaim, and I'm like, this is what I've always done. This is who I've always been for a long time. I don't mean always. I don't mean when I was 5 years old. But I'm saying, I don't even mean when I was 15 years old and I was already frum. However frum maybe I was frummer then than I am now. But a lot of these things, I'm like, even some things from that long ago, I'm like, wow, this is me. This is where I'm coming from. So anyway, this is what I have to share. The danger of someone like Reuven and Mizrachi. That type of extremism, that type of my way or the highway attitude. It's very dangerous. And it's the same thing, I'll be honest, it's the same thing that's dangerous about Lubavitch. It's the same thing that's dangerous about Square. The difference is, you have a lot of good people in Lubavitch. You have a lot of good people in Square. Square Rebbe is a big tzaddik. I have a tremendous respect for Square Rebbe. But it so happened a few years ago, we don't have to mention, and somehow that bacher is shining German. That just failed. I don't know. And the truth is, he had the same problems. I mean, I'm very much connected. I love Satmar very much. He had the same problems in Kiryas Yol. The difference is, there was very clear condemnation in Kiryas Yol, and also a recognition that the Rebbe said when he was Ruv, he wasn't Rebbe yet. I really don't have control about what goes on here. I try my best, but obviously I don't have control. It's the same thing we have in our community. You have people making Siddur Kedushin, making Minyanim, making all kinds of things. Hefker. And you can't do that. We have a Besmedrash, we have a Rav. You have to ask Rishus. He gives Rishus. We have to ask. And sometimes he doesn't give Rishus, and that's his right also. He's a Mard Asra. And I'm not going to go and say what I would do if I was Mard Asra. It's none of my business. I'm not, and I don't look forward to being it. It might happen someday, maybe yes, maybe no, and I'm kind of scared that the whole thing's going to fall apart in my hands, but the B'nai Shalom Fir Tevel, And so it's not going to be in my hands, it's in the Rebbeinu Shalom's hands. But most likely, I would probably be a little bit more liberal about some of these things because I recognize what's going on. But, or maybe we have to do something else. Maybe we have to move. Maybe we have to. I don't know. But that's the situation, you know. So, what more do I have to share? I don't know what to say other than we have to find ways to have shalom and to be insistent. My way or the highway doesn't work that way. And the other thing is, that's an acre. He can't be pushing. And everybody else, you got to do things exactly the way I do it. That's ridiculous. It's silly. It's nonsense. But when people are extremists and fundamentalists, that's what winds up happening. And it's just as bad if you act like a Lubavitcher for literature Yiddishkeit as what Lubavitch is doing. You know? So, and the thing is, you could be a good Jew in Lubavitch. You could be a good Jew in the square. You could be a good Jew by Yossi Mizrachi or Yaron Reuven also. But I see much bigger danger from Yaron Reuven, and now that he has a koilel for Dayanim, it's scary. What kind of Dayanim is this guy producing? This guy who, it's one thing, all right. I don't know if he still has the money. He used to have a lot of money, and he's paying for it. Als the Nadvin. He has someone else's Rosh Koilel. But even so, that this is the guy with the money, it's also a problem. You know, why is it that all Kiruv, or most Kiruv, is Zionist? Because those are the people with the money that are giving to Kiruv. And it's a problem. And so you have Galite who want to be in Kiruv, but don't want to have to be pushing Israel and Zionism, but they have no choice because that's where the money's coming from. From the Avichai Foundation, whatever. If you really believe in it, I don't forgive you that. But I know a lot of people, they don't believe in it. So, how do we deal with it? It's an issue. So, that's what it is. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. And we'll see what happens. Let's hope for good things. Let's make shalom. And also recognize, especially Judaism, for all the religions. I was talking to this very choshev Rav. It wasn't Usher Meza. It was a very choshev Rav. And he was talking about it, and this is the problem with these guys like Yaron Reuven, and they take a Christian mentality into Judaism. That's a big problem. And he was talking about how al derech pshat you could see, this angry God on the cloud and throwing down lightning bolts on sinners in the hands of an angry God. And I told this very choshev Rav, I said, I'm a Heinekel from the Chavas Yoyer, and I just started learning the Sefer Mark Shisha, which is a difficult Sefer, because it's written b'Kitzur Nimrod. But Mark Shisha, the Heilige Seite, the Chavas Yoyer, he says that when Chazal say, Ein mikra yotzei midei pshutai, it can't mean Parashah Milas. when the sages say in the Talmud that Scripture does not deviate from its simple meaning, it cannot mean a plain translation of the Scripture, because we know that that's not the case. Because Chazal tell us that Memachos HaShabbos doesn't mean Sunday, right? And any other number of things, right? So whatever Chazal says is Pshat, that's what's Pshat. And that's what it means, Zein Mikra Yotze Midei Pshutai, is that the Pshat that Chazal gave us, not the simple translation of the words. Meaning, don't be a fanatic, don't be a solo scriptorianic, don't be a fundamentalist. And it means don't be a fundamentalist for Chazal either. So, because we have our Gedolim, and I know people who are essentially fundamentalists for Chazal. It's an Eisel. So, these types of questions, to look into. But we have to be very careful not to become fundamentalist. And the same is true with politics and everything else. It's interesting because, like I said, with I was talking to this Choshev Rav that I was mentioning, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he asked me to, the subject came up about Asher Meza, and he said, he spoke to Asher Meza on the phone. He sounds like a normal, nice guy, and we can agree to disagree. And then he said, unlike Yaron, Reuven, and this who are not nice, normal guys, and who cannot agree to disagree. So how do we do it? So this guy was saying that the problem with Yaron Reuven is that he brings like a Christian mentality into Judaism. And I don't know how he got that in Israel. It's one thing you have a guy who grew up a Christian and became Jewish. And it's a fascinating thing because I work in the prison, right? And we have guys who identify as Native American. Some are, I don't know. And we had that same thing where they pretty much were like taking a Christian fundamentalist approach to Native American ceremonies, and that's totally not what Native American. Yeah, and they weren't Christians, and if you brought in anything Christian into, some of them used to be Christians, but they were decidedly anti-Christian, and they were very offended, just like a lot of Jews are with the missionaries and this and that, and bringing back the stories about the Indian schools and all these things, and they were very offended by this, but they had that spirit of fundamentalism in their religious approach that's supposed to be non-fundamentalist. It happens all over. It's funny because I was talking to the deacon at work, and I said, the Tosfos Yontif. I didn't say it was the Tosfos Yontif, but it's the famous thing. Tosfos Yontif was fighting against the very big problem that we have in Klal Yisrael of talking in shul. And I know my friend Rabbi, I don't know now, but years ago, he was always melamed schus on it. But that's not. And there are other limudei schus on it. But the one thing they always said is that would never happen in a church, right? No one's going to be sitting in the back talking to the guy next to him in a church. You'd never do that, right? So he said, "Oh, you should see the ushers in the back of the church by us." It happens all over. The same, and the thing that the deacon said to me is that the problem with human beings is they're always being human. And it's the truth. It's the same thing. And I was talking to this rabbi about this. He knew what I was talking about. How the Buddhists and the Sikhs, these religions began as anti-religions, right? And then they became religions. So when the Guru Nanak made this whole thing about just connect to God without all this religious stuff, right? And all that stuff that was supposed to be non-religious just became a new religion. So, they weren't supposed to eat halal meat or kosher meat. Not that I don't think in Punjab they were really worrying about kosher meat, because, it's a religious fanaticism. So then what did they do? They made their own type of, way of killing the animal. And then they can only eat that way. Or they said, everybody has to sit on the floor, so we're all equal. You don't want some people sitting on a chair and some people sitting on the floor. So now in Canada, this 15, 20 years ago, it was a Sikh temple, and they wanted to the old people want to sit in chairs. They couldn't sit on the floor. And they said, well, we're not supposed to do that, right? I was like, if the Guru Nanak was around today, he'd say everybody can sit in chairs. We can afford chairs in Canada. It's not Punjab anymore. So I remember a guy I went to public school with, and he was like, Joe, he asked a question, this and that, and I'm not going to get into what he asked me because it's not so nice. Nothing nasty, just, it could be construed somewhat as anti-Semitic, but he didn't mean it like that. And I said, what religion are you? He's like, well, I'm Sikh, but I'm not religious. And I want to say to him, if the Guru Nanak was around today, he would feel much more in common with you than with the religious Sikhs with the turbans and the beards, right? And it's like the same thing that they say the Baal Shem Tov. If the Baal Shem Tov was around today, or they say if the Vilna Gaon was around today, he'd probably feel more comfortable in Williamsburg. And if the Baal Shem Tov was around today,